So this is just a quick rant, but I had to say it. Um, I'm just really tired, and I know at the grand scheme of things, nothing that I say really matters here. But um, it's we got to talk about it. It doesn't matter if you vote Republican or Democrat, in the fact that both Republican and Democrats are in the pockets of they're both in the pockets of corporations and monopolies, right? We live in late stage capitalism, and part of that definition is the fact that we live in a country where we are being controlled by the CEOs, by the board of directors and the shareholders. We are run by monopolies. Our capitalism has run amok, and the 1%, the people on top, whatever you want to call them, are the ones who call the shots on it and make the prices for everything. They have control over all of our food, all of our energy, and they're the ones that make the prices and the call for those things. It's not inflation. I like the word like the younger generations of people are coming up with, like the word vague washing. Is not inflation. Inflation does not necessarily explain the rise of the cost of living recently, which technically the cost of living has been going up since like the 90s and has been going up since before then, since again those boomer era prices no longer exist. The American dollar isn't nearly as strong. You used to be able to buy a house and a car on a minimum wage, but you can't do that now. It's really common for Americans to have multiple jobs because a lot of jobs pay only $7, $8 an hour or $11 an hour, and you can't live a fulfilling life off of that. Uh, that being said, and plus, during 2020, Donald Trump was president, we had the pandemic. During the pandemic, corporations and companies were laying people off in mass, and yet they were making record profits. In 2020, I'm not going to name what video game company it was, but there was a video game company CEO who was fired. But as you all know, golden parachute, he got about $14 million to leave, and I think he might have gotten even more after that. The crazy thing about it was that that company was also under fire for underpaying its employees. Like, it's really hard and difficult to live out in California. It's so expensive. It's even more astronomically expensive now that a lot of people that even work for these companies cannot even afford to live near work in our car-dependent hellscape. But that's kind of the point I was saying. Like, these ballooning salaries of CEOs, board of directors, and shareholders, the fact that they can control the prices of everything, they can keep raising the prices on essential goods because we literally need these goods to live. And they have direct and unprecedented control over all of that stuff. And it's still now, that's still the case now, even in the tech center. We have ghost jobs, fake job openings. It's extremely hard to get a job now. It was harder to get a job back then, but now it's even worse. You've got people with years of experience getting laid off and going on months or even years without being able to get hired again, even if they have relative experience in the applications that they're filling out. Ghost jobs, fake job openings, so many more layoffs, and yet these companies and these corporations are making record profits. We're more industrious. We work harder. We're more productive now than the generations that came before us. When it comes to millennials, zillennials, and Gen Z, we're working harder, and yet we're not seeing any kind of the benefits that may have existed back in like the 1930s and 1950s with company loyalty. Again, institutionalized racism, so African Americans and Native Americans didn't even have access to that stuff for the most part, like that company loyalty. And when we did have prosperous neighborhoods, 500 of those, by the way, if you're African American, those were literally bombed and flooded by dams to oblivion. But again, getting on a rant, if you look at either Republicans or Democrats, their pockets are both filled with money from lobbyists, which other first world nations call illegal. There's a bunch of other things I could talk about too, and I'll be repeating a lot of these points in another video if I go around to making it. I don't know, but yeah, either group were kind of screwed. So why do people vote for Joe? Like I said, voting for Donald Trump is not going to save us from the fact that corporations run this country. He's never shown any signs of doing that. That's just not going to happen. And some people want to say they'll vote for Trump because it will somehow stop what's going on in Gaza. He's not going to do anything about that. He's thick as thieves with Israel just as much as Joe Biden is. Republicans and conservatives are, even though now they're starting to come out the woodwork and some of them are criticizing how much money the United States gives to Israel, I don't realistically see them or Trump or his administration doing anything about it. There's a lot of factors to that, but if you've been following, Christian fascists, evangelical Christian extremists are trying to take over the country, and they pour so much money and support into Donald Trump and the Republican Party. a part of the reason that Israel gets so much funding and money from the United States is because these Christian extremist groups have this cult mentality that if they support Israel, Jesus will come back. All of this nonsense. I've been following that for years. They're going to continue to do that. They're not going to stop doing that out of nowhere. They don't care what happens to Palestinian people. In fact, a lot of Christian extremists here in the United States and even in South America have been a part of like revisionist history smear campaigns against Palestinian people, trying to make this seem like an ancient feud and all this other stuff. It's not, but that just gets back to my point that we're not really, both options suck. Then what's the solution? The solution is the fact that the only reason that like young people voted for Biden, the only reason why millennials and zillennials and maybe even older Gen Zs were able to vote for Biden wasn't because we had faith that Biden was going to do anything. It was because both options suck, as I've said before, but at least Biden and the Democrats aren't obviously, even though they do have racist and weirdos amongst them too, are not obviously being influenced by white nationalist, white supremacist, and Christian extremist groups like Donald Trump and the associates around him are being pushed by. And again, this is not unique either. The three groups I just mentioned, white nationalists, white supremacists, and Christian extremists, have been infiltrating the Republican Party for a very long time and have been a part of the Republican Party for a very long time. Big pushers and movers for the support that they had behind your boy, Ronald Reagan, the devil himself. Which a large part of like the American workers and the middle class dying and the working poor getting even more poor has a lot to do with Ronald Reagan and the policies that he passed, which were completely against ordinary Americans in the favor of corporations and the mega rich. That was his entire his entire presidency. Anti-black, anti-woman, classist. But he got a bunch of dumb white folks to vote against their own best interests, and he used racism and xenophobia to help him do that, which is what Trump does, except Ronald Reagan actually spoke with intelligence. But yeah, we're kind of screwed either way. There's some other stuff I could talk about with that, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of your two options. You know, and like I said, we have right-wing politicians right now, right-wing Supreme Court justices that are serving for life that are currently trying to get rid of African-American history and African-American programs, Asians, and that whole awkward model minority thing and deal that a lot of them made with right-wing Supreme Court justices and all that crazy stuff. Harvard and the Ivy League schools directly were funded by race-based hereditary anti-African slavery of African women, men, and children. Like literally, they were built off the enslavement of African-American people, indirectly, and directly. Haiti looks like that. You know why Haiti looks like that? It's because of the United States and France. That's a whole other can of beans. I'm not even going to get into that. If you know, you know. If you don't, there are videos on YouTube. There was a recent one that was published that went into super depth about it and even talked about some stuff that I didn't know about it. I'll probably put a link to it in the description. But yeah, there's other stuff I could mention, but yeah, it's the problem is that we have a two-party system. We need more parties. And the thing is, I'm not saying anything that the younger generation especially doesn't know. If you're an educated, somewhat zillennial or millennial, you already knew this. If you're an educated, somewhat Gen Z, you already knew this. You know, people wanted to vote for Bernie. They wanted to vote for even the black guy with the crazy hair. I forgot his name, Cornel West. People wanted to give these people a chance. The 4-day work week is something that other first world nations have. The United States is so far behind other countries, other first world countries when it comes to actual benefits and protections for its workers, for the people that work here. There's a reason I say it like that. The EU is a big example. There's other first world nations and organizations that come to mind, and that's a whole laundry list of things I could talk about, but I'm running out of time. What else? And yeah, there's no shortcut to reparations and reconstruction for African Americans and Native Americans, which I firmly believe in. And I firmly believe that if we were to actually do that, which I don't think we can do that in the political economic environment that we have right now. Don't know how I feel about ADOS. Screw FBA. I've talked about FBA before. Screw FBA. They are full of crap. We are not Native American, and they want to deal with the model minority racial hierarchy here in this country, which I understand why they want to deal with it, but they're dealing with it in a completely wrong way when other people that have come before us have the answers on how to deal with that. You can't fight anti-African American racism from these immigrants and from other Americans because we live in a racial hierarchy. You can't deal with that kind of bigotry with bigotry. It just doesn't work like that. But yeah, there's other things I could have mentioned before, but yeah, there's no shortcut. African Americans, we need Reconstruction and reparations. Our power and our blood went into American banks and being the biggest factor in the founding of the creation of the foundational wealth of this country and the continuous wealth of this country. For all the criticisms that African American people get, some of it valid, some of it not, some of it kind of in between of African American culture, as diverse as it is, from hip hop to the Gullah Geechee to Afro-Lations, which I hope I'm saying that right. That's Afro-Appalachian peoples. So much, even right down to the way that you speak English, is because of African American culture. Even the way that people speak English abroad is from African American vernacular English. Just how extremely dominant the way that the women around the world want to have their bodies shaped is directly from the influence of African American women. The lips, the butt, all that. I'd get more into that, but yeah, and that might start a wave where other nations give over Reconstruction and reparations to their historically racially enslaved African populations, like Afro-Brazilians, Haitians, Afro-Colombians, Afro-Cubans, Afro-Dominicans, Afro-Guatemalans, Jamaicans, etc., the entire racially enslaved African diaspora, at least from the transatlantic slave trade, because the Arab slave trade, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I could have mentioned more stuff, but yeah, that's it. Oh, and if this is not obvious, voting for Trump is not going to stop what's going on in Gaza. It's not, because again, as I said before, Republicans are surrounded by white nationalists, white supremacists, and Christian extremists. The whole colonizer trinity literally has been surrounding them from day one. You have crazy evangelical extremist groups in this country that on the local level are taking away rights and history from African Americans and from women in general in different states, trying to bring back child labor. Right-wingers are trying to do that and trying to make homelessness illegal. These evangelical extremist groups who are in Trump's ear, nothing new about that, nothing new about Christian extremist groups infiltrating and being a part of right-wing parties of the Republican Party, like they were with Ronald Reagan. If Trump wins, they're just going to continue to support Israel because they believe if they continuously support Israel, Jesus will come back. That's a whole other conversation, but that's not going to change either. So hopefully you learned something new, and a lot of you already knew this, so this is just a rant. Peace.